Good morning. Good
Good morning.
afternoon. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome back to Passionate World Radio Network. Distinguish yourself from the ordinary. And today at 11:30 California time, 1:30 New York time, on Lillian's interview, let me present to you Georg Finder, who's a court-accepted credit damage evaluator since 1995, and he deals with credit, your credit, and he is considered an expert witness on credit. So, good morning, Georg. How are you today?
I am good. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, you're more than welcome. Credit is a very important part of a person's financial history, and yet a lot of people really don't understand how credit works or how it can really affect them. So when do you become involved when people need help with credit?
Well, you said it perfectly. When they need help, when they realize that it's beyond what they can handle without assistance.
So what should they do when they come to you? Are there certain questions they need to ask you, or is there certain things they need to do that you ask of them?
I ask of them. When they come to me, the first thing that they have to realize is I'm not going to work a miracle. I'm going to work a plan which they are in charge of, and I am there to make sure, like a coach, that they do it better with me than they could do it on their own. And I'm not there to nag them. I am there to encourage them, because I want them to be as happy as they can and as comfortable as they can with their money and reaching their goal.
Now, is it a good idea for people to go to some of these companies that advertise on the radio or on the TV about coming to them so that they can put all their debt into one total debt?
I don't think it is, personally. It's my belief that keeping your debts separate it's a good way to protect yourself from identity theft, from other problems. The only purpose in consolidating, and all they mean by consolidating is putting all your eggs in one basket. What generally happens is that the debt counselor will negotiate or set up a plan to lower the interest rate, if possible, so that there's more money going to principal, and principal is the amount that you borrowed that you owe, and so that less of the money that you pay out goes to interest, which is the cost of the money that you borrow. And in many cases, it is the interest that causes the problem, not the amount that you borrow. And they are two very different amounts calculated in two very different ways. And and the two sums, the amount that you borrow and that you're going to repay, which is capital reduction or principal reduction, and interest are the cost of those funds, is added together to make one payment amount. So if you're making a payment, and I'm going to illustrate this in very simple numbers, let's say you borrow $1,000, and the agreement is that you'll pay back the principal over a 2 or 3 year period. So if you divide $1,000 by 3 years, that's 36 months, and your payment on $1,000 would be approximately $35 a month. And that's the agreement. You're going to repay the amount that you borrowed at about $35 a month. Except now your lender is going to add interest. And I'm going to not complicate this by talking about other things that can easily subvert or hurt the plan of $35 a month, because with the interest, you could pay. They could charge you anywhere from $1 a month to $90 a month for the interest. One of the most notorious companies in the lending business is a company called Payday Loans. Payday Loans and several other lenders are in a group where they tell you right up front that they're going to charge you 8% per month on whatever you borrow. Well, 8% per month equals 96% a year. So if you were to borrow from that company particularly, your $35 payment just to repay what you borrowed, the cost of borrowing that would be another $36. So in order to borrow that, you're going to pay them $72 for $36 worth of value. You'll never get out of debt. Impossible. And that's the trap that people get into. They don't understand the cost of borrowing versus the actual repayment of the borrowed funds. And that's where and the law is very explicit. The law says that you must explain to your borrower what you're charging them, called the Truth in Lending Act. And if they violate that, or they rush you through, sign here and I'll give you the money, and you'll be as happy as you possibly can. If you're rushed to signing, maybe you're not in the right place. You need to be able to take the time, and the lender should be willing to answer every question you have about the borrowing. What's it going to cost? What if you're late with your payment? Are there any extra charges that you're going to pay? What if you pay it off early? Is there an extra charge for that? So there's at least a dozen different ways that they're going to jack up the bill, and that's what you want to avoid. And in terms of your credit, if you're late, that's what the creditor is allowed to report to the credit bureau. And the more often you're late, the worse your credit report is going to be. And if you have a habit or reputation of being late, people will still loan you money, but it will cost more. Okay, Lillian?
That sounds good, yes. Now, when people first graduate from high school, a lot of them need money to go and pay for their courses or to pay for their tuition. So what would you consider a good course of action for them to do before they sign their name on the dotted line?
Well, first of all, be sure that you're taking courses that you want to take. And in many cases, the cost of the course is exceeded by the cost of the books. So what can the new student do to keep the cost of college down? And the first thing they can do is buy used textbooks. And there are textbook stores that literally only resell books that have already been used by another student. There are some people who think that they must have fresh books that no one else has ever used. I don't happen to agree with that. I like to get books that have been used by somebody else, because in most cases, those other people have already underlined the difficult parts that they need to remember. So it's like having a silent tutor to help you get through the course. And that kind of book costs less. The other thing to do is make sure that you know what you're getting into. Where are you going to get the money to pay it? Is it going to be the bank of mom and dad, or are you going to have to work for the money? Are you going to get a part-time job that's reliable or not? Because once you commit to the payment program, the lender doesn't care why you don't make your payments. All they care about is that you haven't made the payment. And they'll accept some excuses once, but not in an ongoing basis. They have to collect their money to stay in business. So they're not going to be like your mom or dad might be and say, well, that's okay, honey, I'll just work it out. They're going to make sure that other people know that you haven't repaid so that they can be cautious about lending you any money in the future. Period. That's it. If you don't make your payments, you're not a good credit risk. And there is risk involved. If the higher the risk, the more it's going to cost. There is what they call a credit risk score, which most of us know as a credit score or a FICO score, and that's for a whole different subject. But it's the way that the businesses who are going to take a risk have a shortcut to know whether or not they even want to talk to you about lending you money. If your credit score is too low, it's a waste of time, in their opinion, to talk to you about the possibility of lending you money. The higher your score for mortgages, the more likely it is that you're going to get the loan at an adjusted rate based on your reputation, because your reputation is the basis of trusting you or not trusting you.
In the old days, when you wanted to build up your credit or to get credit, they had gasoline cards. You'd go to one, and you'd build up a little credit, and then you'd graduate to Sears. So what do people do today, especially kids, who need to build up their credit? Because once they're off dad's and mom's present income or are no longer on their credit cards, they don't have any credit at all. So how do they build it up?
Well, the first way to build up your credit is to, first of all, get a job. You must have income to get credit, because the difference between credit and income is credit is what somebody trusts you to have, and income is what you earn and get paid for on the spot.
So you need to go get yourself a part-time job at the library, at Burger King.
Anything that has reliable income. And Burger King and, well, libraries don't pay very well. Most people who work at a library have to walk to work because they can't afford anything, all right?
Right.
So if mom is supporting you or dad is supporting you, that's very nice, but the point of your question is, what is the borrower doing to generate their own ability to repay the debt?
Yes.
So you can't go from one borrowing source to pay the other borrowing source, because if you do that, you've doubled your trouble.
Now, a lot of people don't understand that another area in which George is very good in is divorce finances. And many people, when they get divorced, don't really understand how it is split. Now, if you have a prenuptial agreement, most of that has been taken care of. You know what you're allowed and what you're not allowed. But
no, you know what you're agreed to, not what you're allowed. These can be renegotiated, but you've already made a commitment to certain arrangements. As an example, a prenuptial agreement basically says one party has an antique car collection or a gun collection or anything that's very personal. All right.
Right.
And the agreement says that whatever else we agree to, I will never touch or try to get your private collection or any part of it into my possession. Now, that is the starting point. And lawyers who are very good at arguing will take that as a starting point as to whatever else can be done. A good lawyer will make sure that the agreement is enforceable, and so you want to make sure that you're agreeing to something that is enforceable in the future. So the prenuptial agreement is a starting point, not a finishing point.
Okay, so everybody take note on that you can negotiate like any other agreement. It's a foundation on which you can build up on.
Right.
So the next point is when a couple shares their bank account or they share their assets, which would be a house, a boat, a car.
Well, it's my opinion that sharing is a wonderful thing, but very often when couples share, their identity merges into one identity, and it's not him and her or him and him or whatever it is. It's not Bob and Jane. It's Bane. And that gets very confusing when you try to unravel them or unwrap them, and that's what a divorce is. You try to allow the individuals who merge together to re-emerge into themselves again into the world. And that can be very painful, and that can be very confusing. And so I very strongly encourage there to be private accounts, personal and separate, sole and separate, and that there be joint accounts for the protection of the family unit in a divorce. But the more you keep your own identity, the better it is for everybody to protect themselves, to keep what's theirs. In divorces, and there are two kinds of divorce. There is a contested divorce where the two parties cannot agree on what they want to unwrap and get on with their new lives. And there is the other divorce, which word escapes me at the moment. But basically, it is where both parties write out, for simplicity, what they want to leave the marriage with, and they agree what they're going to do. Now, if there are kids involved, and I know we're now going from college students to separating with kids, a lot of attention is paid to retirement funds, to college funding. There are a lot of facets in a contested divorce that needs to be argued out. And one of the worst things that an individual going through a divorce can do is to rush through it. Just as any arrangement you're getting into, know what you're getting into. If the college agrees to give you a course in archaeology and you find that you don't like archaeology but you've already committed to pay for it, you're going to pay for it. That's the rule. If you attend a certain number of classes, you are on the hook for that amount of money. Well, the same thing is true in a divorce. If you agree, and you're all hypothetical, that you want custody of the kids, you want custody of the money, you want to be supported for whatever reason for a certain period of time, all of these things require one major commitment, and that is you have to sign your name as proof of agreement. And that signing of your name is the most powerful act that an individual can perform when it comes to money, because now it's on record and it's that, well, oh, I thought he meant, or gee, I should have this, or he could have that. Whatever's on the black and white document, whether it's a loan document, whether it's a prenuptial agreement, whether it's a divorce decree, once you've signed it, that's pretty much it. That's the agreement. Now, happily or unhappily, it's very rarely that simple, and it's very important that you understand what you're getting into. And that's part of the job of your attorney. In many cases, your parents can help you, but are not the ultimate authority, because unless they're in the profession of doing that, they're probably only going to use their personal experience to guide you, and your personal experience may be much different than your parents or your brothers or your sisters or your cousins. And You want to be as well protected as you can. You want to be able to have confidence that the outcome that you're trying to achieve is achievable, that you're not going to fail at your goal because you have good advice, you have practical advice, and you're not going to promise your life away and then be in a disadvantaged position until you get out of that promise. So take the time. Do not rush. Understand what you're getting into. That's what lawyers are very good at. And this is not a promotion for lawyers. I'm simply saying be very clear and understand what I consider to be the 5 W's of any agreement. Who's agreeing to it? Why are they agreeing to it? What are they agreeing to? Again, it's the example of I'm going to loan you $1,000 and you're going to pay me back. Well, the question is how long will it take? And at what amount of payment? And what's it going to cost? Those are the things you need to know. And where are the traps? Where are the details that will just ruin my wallet and make it harder for me to have a good life with confidence and self-respect? Read it and understand that those 5 points are what you want to know all the time. And my simple analogy is on reputation. You grew up with friends, we hope, and that it's not unusual for friends to say, hey, I'll meet you at such and such, let's meet for coffee or basketball or whatever it is you meet for. And you agree, you know where you're going to go, when you're going to go, what you're going to do, and how long you're going to do it for. And your friends show up at wherever they need to be, and somebody doesn't show up. That's the beginning of a bad reputation. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you can't make it, notify them as soon as possible. Hey, my car broke down. I'm not going to be able to make it. I broke my leg. I'm not going to be able to make it. And the point is that they're not just standing around on the street corner waiting for you. Same thing with a lender. When you make your promise, you have to do everything possible to keep it. Period. That's it. Once you're allowed, they will give you the benefit of the doubt. More than that, they will give you the punishment of not trusting to be reliable. That gets very expensive.
Absolutely.
That's what reputation is all about. What have you done, and what you have done, the way you have behaved, is the expectation that you're going to do in the future. Now, people change, no question about it, but until you can prove that you've changed, and that's called rebuilding, you're going to have a very difficult time to get people to have confidence in that you are who you are, or that you can do what you say you promised to do. And that trust is built on believability. If they don't believe you, but they have another motive to try to believe you, and we call that profit, because we're putting this in a business context, okay? The lender is motivated by, if I lend Janie or John whatever it is they want to borrow, which I believe they will be able to repay, then I can stay in business. And because it's highly likely, based on their history, that they will or they won't do what they promised, I charge the inconvenience of doing business with them accordingly. If the lender has to take his court, if the lender has to write off the loan or charge it off, that's going to come back to haunt you. And once that happens, the ability to borrow either disappears or gets more expensive. And I mean really more expensive. People should not go to somebody who's going to charge you 8% per month unless they have absolutely no other recourse, and they must have the money for what I will call a practical reason. not to go to Vegas and gamble it away, not to get the new dress or the new computer that you want just because it's fashion. You living within your means is the best way to not have to worry about, oh my God, how am I going to make that payment? And living within your means just means exactly that. If you make $100 a month or $100 a day or $100 a minute, live within that $100. Don't live at somebody else's lifestyle. Live at your own lifestyle because that's what you can afford. That, of course, assumes that you don't win the lottery every week.
I haven't met too many people that win the lottery every week, maybe once a month or once every several months. I know a lot of people are going to ask, well, what happens if you're married and your spouse signs a loan for his company or puts the house up for mortgage and they don't tell you about it and they die? Are you responsible for fulfilling what your spouse signed?
It depends on the state that you're in, and it depends on the type of loan. There is a presumption called the innocent spouse. That means that you never knew anything about it. Well, if you didn't sign for it, there's a good advocate can be sure that you don't have to pay for debts that you did not agree to. In some states that works, in other states it doesn't. And when you get married, you should know, are you in a community property state or are you not in a community property state? And part of the defense against that is sole and separate bank accounts, sole and separate property. As an example, let's go to the husband or the wife who starts a business. It does okay. They want it to grow. When I say they, I mean one or the other, not both. And only one party is involved in the business. Let's say it's a babysitting business, okay? And by the way, babysitting today is a real business.
Yeah, it is.
The minimum wage is sometimes applied to babysitters. It's no longer $1 an hour and all you can eat out of the refrigerator. It's $15 an hour and all you can eat out of the refrigerator.
Plus the boss, okay. So you can get into it.
Yep. And whatever it is the income source. The business is doing good, but it could grow if it borrowed money. And the spouse is not involved in that business. They don't talk about it. They don't brainstorm about it. The only way they talk about it is, honey, I have to go off to work. I'll see you in an hour or 5 hours or whatever. And or as the business grows and it's more profitable, one spouse says to the other, wow, I made a lot of money this quarter, and I have so much money we should take a vacation together. That's not participating in the business. That's participating in the benefits of the business. But since that benefit was not involving both parties, it can be argued that both parties are not responsible for the debt. The best advice, and again, I'm not a lawyer. I want to be very clear. I am not a lawyer, and I do not practice law. What I'm suggesting here are logical, reality-based steps. Keep your own identity. What's yours is yours. What's theirs is theirs. There's his and ours, hers and ours, and that's it. If the business is totally in one party's name and both parties are not signing on the account, but there is the beneficiary arrangement for the account so that if the spouse dies in a car accident or whatever, access to those funds is available to the surviving spouse. Now there is a platform, a foundation for not being responsible for what your husband or wife, spouse, has created in terms of debt and responsibility. I have my money, he has his money. I take part of my money. And again, I use the figure of $100. I get $100 a week. And of the $100 a week, I pay my own allowance. I have my own allowance that I give myself for coffee and makeup and transportation or whatever else is necessary. And we've agreed in the marriage that of my income, I'm going to give part of it, and I'm not going to give a percentage, but I'm going to give part of it on an agreed upon amount or percentage into the joint account, because now there's participation, but there's not unlimited liability or unlimited responsibility. Maintain your own identity, but you're part of the community. That's the best way to prepare for what happens to 50% of all marriages. They end.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, well, you have to realize that there's a 50% chance that Bob and I are not going to be together forever. And let's enjoy it while we can, and let's not get punished or beat up or burned or other bad things when one of us doesn't want to be together anymore. And we'll assume that somebody will have hurt feelings, and that will lead to a contested divorce. And contested means they're going to argue over things. They're not going to say, oh, let's have, you get half and I get half. Somebody's going to get greedy and says, I want it all, or I want 3/4 of it, or I want whatever I want, and you have to give it to me. And now personality becomes in it. It's not unusual for one party to be more dominant or more socially adept and the other party to be a homebody. And so the party that is more outgoing, more involved in the world and society is going to be pushier and try to rush this through, because the more you think about something and understand it, not just think about it, but understand it, it's a chance to think one or two steps ahead. If you, in the divorce agreement, and I'm going to make a ridiculous example, you say, I'm not only going to give you half of my retirement fund, I'm going to give you the other half as well. Or let's turn it around. I want you to give me half of your retirement account, and I want your other investments, all of them, as opposed to a fair and equitable arrangement. And most people who are getting a divorce don't agree on what's fair and equitable. That's why contested divorces are expensive, because arguing is expensive, negotiating is expensive, and it's like, if you can't sit down with your spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse to discuss it, agree on it, and do it, then you're going to have to get outside help, usually a lawyer or a debt counselor or a divorce specialist. In most cases, if we're going to talk about divorce requires a team of people, and the more assets you have, the more income you have, the larger the team is going to be. Lawyers are supposed to be, and I believe usually are, the most knowledgeable people about the law. But the law is only one part of a divorce. The other parts are financial and custody and other things. And I'm assuming that the divorcing people are mature enough to have children and assets and dogs and family involvement. And we've gone a huge step from trying to get into college, that each of these things that we're discussing is a lifetime involvement. Not that you're going to be in college forever, but how you do in college determines your income. Your income determines how much you can borrow. Your reputation pretty much dictates what it's going to cost to borrow it if you borrow it. So your reputation is going to follow you through your entire life. And it may change, but wherever it starts, it will always haunt you, and especially with the Internet. It's hard to have secrets on the Internet, because something that you did 20 years ago may come back to haunt you. This happens frequently in political situations where somebody is trying to be confirmed for a government office, and the people who don't want them, the applicants to get the job, will go back and check out your history. What have you done? What is your reputation? Have you done what you promised? Are you consistent? Now more than ever, your behavior is available to be looked at. Now more than ever, people do not know each other, and they rely on a third-party record keeping. In the old days, we used to call it counting chops. What did you do? How did you do it? Were you reliable? Were you good? Were you nice? Were you friendly? Did you tell the truth? Did you not tell the truth? Did you not plan very well? And each of these now is numerically. It used to be, in a credit context, a person would be rated as an A borrower, B borrower, C borrower, D borrower, and a F borrower. Okay? Now they don't do that anymore because there was too much wiggle room between A and B, and that would depend on who's going to make the loan. Now they use numbers because if you're an A, that's a very fuzzy definition. If you're a number one, there's no wiggle room. You are a number one. If you're a number two, you're a number three, you're a number five. And in the credit score industry, it's typically from about 400 as the lowest number and about 850 is the highest number. And there are some variances in there. But if you're not at least a 600 in the quality of your score, you're probably not going to get the loan at the best price possible, period. And that's why it's more important than ever that you behave in a way that reflects good on you. It's very important for you to realize people will give you a break. They will not give you a lifetime of break. The only exception to that, of course, is the bank of mom and dad. But your friends are only going to give you so many second chances. Lenders are only going to give you so many second chances. And second chances when it comes to credit, or third chances when it comes to credit, it's more and more expensive. So if you get into a situation where you need debt counselors, where you need financial guidance, it's probably because you didn't understand the rules of the game to start with. You didn't realize the difference between repaying what you borrow and the cost of repaying what you borrow.
Of course. So, folks, what you have to realize is that once you go to work, you can start building your trust with your credit.
No, you do it even before then.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
you do it on the way that you keep your promises to your friends. Okay. And it's not unusual for one friend to say to the other, "Yeah, I need some extra whatever. Could you loan me 50 cents until I get my allowance?" That's where it starts with most people. It's not the bank of mom and dad. It's not the bank of Bank of America. It's, can you loan me a couple of bucks for a couple of days? Or loan me 50 cents for a couple of days? And then what do you do with that? Do you pay it back on time? Are you building a good habit? Are you building up the debt to the point where you can never repay it without major upheaval in your life? That's when it starts, when you're able to earn money as an allowance as opposed to what I'll call an outside job. Because that's when you're going to build the habits that are going to stick with you for most of your life.
You're absolutely correct. So, George, please tell everybody where they can find you on the World Wide Web and all the contact information you can provide to them.
Sure. The best place to find me on the World Wide Web is at www.creditdamageexpert.com. And there are several services that I offer at that site. But most people who come to me for help are in a legal situation that they need valuation of. And you only get valuation through evaluation. So they come to me to find out what can they do, what can they expect, what can they recover from the harm that's been done to them. And almost everybody that I work with, I am not an attorney, I do not practice law, but I do help people with financial issues. By the way, I'm not a lender, and I don't get involved in loans in any way, shape, or form other than to compare the cost of one loan over another. And the interesting thing about loans is no two loans are the same unless they're from the same company. If Company A loans you the amount that you want, they have their own contract, they have their own rate of getting repaid. And that is very important to understand. And it's part of the information that I can help somebody with. Know the contract that you're getting involved with.
Know the difference, too, between a loan and also there's something that the bank also gives you, I forget, a line of credit.
The line of credit is a loan.
Yes, and a lot of people don't understand that. And the percentage may be different on what the interest they are charging you. So make sure you understand what you're getting yourself into.
If you don't understand it, you're always going to wind up in hurt.
Yes.
Okay? So don't sign anything you don't understand. If you don't understand it, and if you don't agree to it, do not sign it. Do not underestimate the power of your signature, because as soon as you agree, you are committed. When you sign that loan document, whatever it says, the lender has the built into that loan agreement to do whatever is possible, and that's the key word, possible, to collect the money from you. If you're borrowing from a commercial lender, they have limitations on what they can do. It's not like they're going to borrow from, I'm going to call it a gangster, okay? We call him Guido in our neighborhood. If you don't pay Guido, he'll come and break your leg. The bank won't do that. They will do other things to you which will hurt, but will not be as painful. But they will be painful.
Yes, we used to call them loan sharks.
There you go, loan shark. I like that. Yeah.
That's what I was taught. Georg also teaches.
Yes.
And
I have
courses.
I have courses to help people understand how to make a decision about an issue that's in front of them. Those courses include how to know when to co-sign for somebody or not co-sign for somebody, because it is very important to understand the position of the person who's giving you the money as well as the person who wants the money. And I think that if you have an experience in both points of view, you become a more realistic borrower. You don't get into student loans that you can't pay for because everybody else is doing it. And all of a sudden you have an economy that's got real estate problems, student loan problems, because everybody's doing it. And the issuer of the money didn't think it through. Never underestimate the power of greed, because we all have it. We all want things. That's what greed is all about. There's good greed and bad greed. And in another show, we will talk about that. Okay?
Absolutely. And he is also a speaker. So if you would like to invite George to come out and give a speaking engagement that you feel that your organization or company needs to hear, or you're a lawyer and you need someone like George to come out, he's an expert witness, then please contact George because he'll help you out. Well,
let me share that I have 12 continuing legal education topics on which I speak regularly to lawyers and paralegals, and do it for CLE credit. That's required of lawyers to have. There's also continuing professional education topics that I do for groups. And whoever is interested, contact me at www.creditdamageexpert.com, and we can discuss the details. I am available for a interview, consultation, depending on the details, up to 15 minutes of the problem at no charge. And that phone number is 714-441-0900. And I look forward to hearing from anybody with a question about credit, not about marriage, not about getting a job, credit use and credit valuation. That's what I'm happy to talk about. And I deal with credit reports extensively. My four most common topics that I deal with are divorce, personal injury, where you're in some sort of accident and you're hurt and there are money issues involved. So divorce, mortgages, those are a good place to start. And I look forward to whoever I can help. Talk with you.
Well, thank you very much for listening. You can listen to George Finder all over again at PassionateWorldRadioNetwork.com, Twitter.com/@_Caldwell, CAULDWELL, YouTube.com/PWR Network LLC, Facebook.com/PWR Network, and GooglePlus.com/PWR Network LLC. And before we go away straight, Emerson had this to say: this world belongs to the energetic. Thank you all very much for listening, and remember, please keep listening. Thank you.